All right. Welcome aboard, gentlemen. It says we're live. G'day, Carl.
Good morning.
G'day, Simon.
How are we doing?
Not bad.
Good.
Very well.
As we were saying, waking up to the earth-shattering news that Keith Richards had given up smoking. He's given up the drink and he's given up smoking. Is there nothing sacred?
He'll probably get another 10 years out of that.
Well, I think he's just realised, hasn't he, that Christ, I could keep doing this. Perhaps I'll give up stuff and keep going a bit longer.
Wow. Strong constitution.
There's the old joke, isn't it? What kind of world are we going to be leaving to Keith Richards?
Yes.
Only him and cockroaches will survive the.
Yeah, because apparently Lemmy and Willie Nelson were going to be there with him, but Lemmy's gone, so Keith's probably the last man standing.
Willie Nelson's still going, isn't he? Willie Nelson is older than Keith, but he's well into his 80s, isn't he, Willie Nelson?
He's a Willie Nelson likes greenery.
Let's see how old he is.
I think what's interesting about the Stones touring again, too, guys, is that I can't help think about Richard Fox and his theory. You know that
86.
There's two things that he says that the Stones want to do: tour when Mick Jagger hits 60, and what will the anniversary of the Rolling Stones be in 2012? 60 years?
Yeah, 62 to, wait a minute, 40, yeah, 60
you
years.
talking about 2022?
Yeah, 2022, yeah.
Yeah, 60 years. It will be.
And Mick will be 80.
Yeah. Guys, can you hear a terrible sort of tapping sound? Like
Yes,
somebody typing or something? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to mute and see if that's me.
Look at that. It's you. Yeah.
Carl?
No, it's
It
Andrew.
happened last week.
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
Wonder if it's so you use the headphones?
No, I don't think it's you, Cole. I think it's Andrew. When Andrew muted himself and it went away.
I'll try it now.
Are you muted, Andrew?
No.
No, just mute yourself again. Mute yourself again.
I'll just turn myself down.
Yeah, see? Stopped happening. Ah.
But I can still hear it though when
you're muted.
Yeah.
So maybe it's Carl. Maybe it's Carl's.
Yeah.
The cicadas are
yeah.
rustling in Carl's garden.
my technology is pretty good.
My technologies.
Yeah, that's better. Can we hear Carl?
No, I can't hear him. No, I can't hear you. Because you plugged in your headphones.
No, he's using that iPhone. No, can't hear you, buddy. You'll have to come back in.
You have to go out and come back in again.
Yeah.
Sure, have you got them turned up? He's going
He's
to come back in again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
So unfortunately, if anybody's watching the replay, we've got no one in the chat. Sorry about the technical difficulties we're having, but this is part 3 of Cream.
Cream. Yes, indeed. We were just saying offline that I like a bit of trivia. The Pete Brown, who wrote a lot of lyrics for Cream, one of his albums was called "Things May Come and Things May Go, but the art school dance goes on forever." And if that's not a title for the 60s, I don't know what is. They are fantastic.
Do you still have art schools? Hey, mate.
Can you hear me now?
We still have art schools. I know somebody who's just gone to art school in South London.
I can hear you. Can you hear Carl?
Oh, good. Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you. Fuck. That's odd.
You can't hear me.
Did you, when you come in, did you check, Carl, that on the Streamlabs thing that sometimes it doesn't catch my microphone, so I have to go out and come back in again?
Okay.
You know, you've got the little tester thing with the green.
I'll try it again.
Okay.
So
All right.
go out and come back in again.
Try again.
Check
buddy.
that the microphone is working.
Hey now.
Yeah, I have that sometimes. So that sometimes, you know, the little green thing beside the picture, it's like a test to see everything's working. And sometimes it doesn't pick up my microphone, so I go out and come back in again to that point. But so yes, the Stones are back on tour this year.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Did you see Keith Richards' Twitter thing? It's like hilarious. Yeah. Hello, we're coming again.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it? I just can't believe it.
Well, I can believe it. I can believe, you know, that you know, when they all, you know, we've discussed this lots of times, you know, that when they all started, I think they, you know, I mean, famously Ringo Starr said, didn't he? Well, I reckon a couple of years, and if I got a couple of hairdressing shops out of it, I think I'll have done pretty good.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
No, see, we can't hear. No, still can't hear you.
I can hear you, mate.
Oddly. Oh, you can hear him, can you?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Simon can't hear me.
Ah, well, I can't hear him. So shall I go out and come back in again?
Okay.
Yeah.
Come back out and
all right.
come in.
Far out.
Yeah, mate. Fuck technology. Yeah, it's a.
I wonder if it's something to do with iPhones or Gmail or something.
Nah, it's got nothing to. It's just you just got to do it a couple of times.
So maybe it's easier with 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. It gets a bit confusing maybe for the system. Yeah.
Well, I watch shows where there's 4 or 5 people on, and
wow, and it's seamless.
Yeah.
It's weird.
That's better. Now I can hear you.
You can
you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Don't know what happened.
So we're cooking. So if anybody's watching the replay, sorry about the technical difficulties. But if you're a regular to the show, you'll notice that we have regular technical difficulties.
Is it
but the
rolling,
show
Bob?
must go on. The show must
rolling,
go
Bob?
on.
Yes. And on and on.
Cream Part 3, gentlemen. Cream Part 3. Hey, Kubrick.
See? Good morning, Kubrick lover. How you doing?
So, give us an introduction on Cream Part 3, guys.
Wheels of Fire. Well, I mean, the first thing to say about it is that it's a 3rd album, live and in the studio. So it's a double, live in the studio. As if what amazes me, Cream, they did 4 albums in 2 years, Cream. I mean, just you know, sort of talk about work ethic and that kind of thing. You know, plus the touring and plus the the live gigs. That to go and knock out, and then for the 3rd album, you know what? We've got enough for a double album. I think that's quite astonishing in many ways.
Well, one thing that I like about Wheels of Fire is the simple fact that it's a double. It's so bold. It's a double album. I mean, there's a lot of filler on there, but anytime you think of Exile or you think of double albums, are just cool because it's a gatefold. You open it up, a bit like Electric Ladyland. That was a double A.
Yeah. So, thinking about it, what double albums came before Wheels of Fire?
I'm not sure of any.
No.
Oh well, that's kind of just what just occurred to me.
Yeah.
To sort of, I can't think of one that's earlier than that. There must have been. Maybe jazz records or something,
or compilations.
I suppose, Blonde on Blonde is 1966.
So
that's probably the first. Yeah, probably the first double album. I can't think of anything before that off the top of my head?
Pretty rare. So White Album was 68. Wheels of Fire was 68. Voodoo Child, Electric Ladyland was 68.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all piggybacking off each other.
So 68 is the year of the double album in many ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking that of course, yes, Blonde on Blonde is probably the seminal one, but in rock terms anyway. But
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but yes, but yes, interesting. Yes, one of the very early ones, to doing double albums, and obviously Half It Live, which I guess is to cash in on the success of their live concerts, because by now they were huge in America, weren't they? Doing playing out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never actually get to know, the quality or the body of all their live work, because there were so many shows in a short period of time. But obviously, with Crossroads, they caught them on a good night. He was on fire. But a lot of people don't realise, I think the song's 7 minutes long, but actually it's about 10 minutes. I think the second solo was edited.
I don't know. On side 3, Crossroads is 4 minutes 13, apparently.
Sorry.
Spoonful is 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Short.
The Crossroads was edited, but what guitar playing he does do is pretty incredible, eh?
Fiery, yeah.
So the album opens up with White Room. I mean, wow, what a rock anthem. That's when we can start to use the word anthem.
Yeah.
You got rock songs, you got classic songs, but that is an anthem.
And also, interestingly, still making singles. Still had a single on it. White Room was a single, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of thing. But yeah, still with one eye on the pop charts.
When I was collecting 45s, I thought I'd be in heaven because I'd buy all their 45s, the Cream 45s and that, not realising even the Albert King Blues 45s, in order for them to make them hot, short little singles, they cut out the solos.
Yeah.
So White Room, the solo starts and then it stops. And I'm like, oh. So the actual albums are better because you get the whole song.
You get the whole song, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they cut it down for the single version, but there's a single
for the
version.
Radio or something.
Must have done. Yeah, they did. It's a shorter US single edit without the third verse.
It's called Radio Edit, in brackets.
Radio Edit, yeah.
That's it.
Well, it's funny.
So what's interesting about that album, from an artistic point of view, is that everyone talks about rumours and the internal strife that was happening in that band at the time, and how it went on to be the catalyst for a great album. I want to ask you guys this question. So we know that Cream had that internal division going on. They were living in separate limos from gigs. They weren't traveling together. So do you think that internal division that they had, that dislike of being in a band, went to some magical place for that last couple of gigs that they did at the Winter? Was it
Winterland?
At
Yeah,
the Winterland,
the Winterland in San
and
Francisco,
and at the Fillmore.
But the Fillmore. Probably. I think the interest to me about that, the travelling in different things and different limos and things, is that in some ways it's probably a social necessity. In that if you just spend all your time with the same two people and you're in a van, and obviously we know that Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker had quite a volatile relationship. The way you keep the band going is to give each other space, isn't it? And the physical way of giving each other space is to travel separately. If you can afford to do it, you hear quite a lot about, particularly, bands traveling, not necessarily, but singers not necessarily traveling in the rest of the band, or when they get big enough to be able to do it, that they convene for gigs, but they don't necessarily, I bet you two don't spend all their life traveling around in the same car, kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
they spend a lot of their time not traveling around in the same car because it's about, we all need a social space in which to exist, and cram together, invades that space, doesn't it? And if you've got if you've got that kind of creative, that intensity of feeling between Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker, which obviously fuels the performance, must do, that tension will fuel the performance. But by the same token, if you don't particularly get on, or you have completely different views of the world, then the best thing to do is to travel. I think I think to me that's quite often an early example of bands discovering that the way that those things work is to travel separately. Because otherwise, you just drive each other. When you don't have to travel in a van together. With the gear.
Well, what we find with most bands, it's pretty much a familiar routine. They start out with no money. They start out with this passion. They're all stuck in a van. They get these great ideas. And then as they get on, they get a bit more money. They get sick of each other. Egos come into play. And then they, with the studio and having a bit more money and expensive producers, they learn the power of overdubbing. I'll mix my vocals tomorrow.
Or you send... him.
I'll do the solo tomorrow. Because I mean, it happened with the Stones. We know about Edith Grove and the Van and the Beatles at Hamburg, and obviously we saw all these bands later. They get a bit of money, they have their own personal assistant, their own limo driver, their own chef, and unfortunately, it takes some of the passion out of the band. But some of these guys are so good. They can still make albums.
Good point.
I mean, I was reading up about Pantera.
There's a leap. Cream to Pantera. Well done.
They had the brothers and Rex Brown in the studio, and Phil Anselmo did all the vocals in another studio, another state. That's how toxic everything was. I'm just using that as an example. But when they started,
the Robinson brothers, don't they? I mean, from the Black Crows. I mean, they went
and
through
Oasis.
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 Yeah. They find their lives very difficult to be together, and I get it. I mean, Kubrick lover saying that didn't John Paul Jones travel separately from the rest of Led Zeppelin? I think he did. Yeah. He's a much quieter guy.
Richie Blackmore was the same. He was introverted nut.
Yeah. Travelled separately from.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think that the closest initially gives us that intimacy, the songwriting partnerships, the gelling of the band. I guess that once that's formed, like I said before, they get a bit complacent, they get a bit precious. They can still pull off that magic, but it's unfortunately not quite the same.
Yeah.
But like Andrew was saying, that volatile push and pull effect can help. A bit like a romantic couple. It can help with maybe passion on stage, or certain songs that probably come out through an argument or a riff or something.
Oh, and the gear too. You have to remember.
You can go your own way.
Demonetized.
Yeah, he was using an SG, a Firebird, and a Les Paul. So he was using all the guitars on that album. Marshall stacks turned up to 10. Take my hat off to the engineers, because just imagine what it would have been like with the technology they had in 1968 to mic, or to go off the soundboard and to engineer a Cream concert.
Well, I think that as we discussed with Glenn Johns, didn't we? Particularly that ability to mic things up in the studio, and the way of doing it. And obviously when Clapton was doing the Beano album, that thing about having the microphone away from the amp, so it was much more like recording it in the third row sort of thing. So you got that ambience of the of the auditorium to enhance the sound, to make it bigger and punchier and stuff like that. And so you could turn the amp right up because you weren't close micing it. Felix Pappalardi.
So he okay. So
man
he
from
was
Mountain.
on the. So he did the studio songs and obviously produced the live parts of the album.
Yeah.
Wow,
And,
what a legend!
well, yeah, completely, yeah. But I think that in those days, that the art of engineering is really coming to the fore in the late '60s.
Yeah,
You think
yeah.
about
Yeah.
it. The thing that's, I don't know why it comes to my mind, but there's an engineer called John Wood who engineered like all the Cat Stevens records and things. You go back to those Cat Stevens records and you listen to the acoustic guitar recording. It's just phenomenal. And you think to yourself, wow, considering what he had to work with and how he managed to work out how to get this fantastic sound. Doing
$1
it
billion.
properly.
$1 billion can't recreate that sound.
No.
Actually, less is more.
No. Well, yeah.
Because
it's a constraint, isn't it? The constraints make for creativity.
Like I said before, they toured the like the Sun Recording Studios was just Reverb and Magic. They toured the Stax Recording Studios, the Muscle Shoals, and what was the other one? Motown.
Yeah.
And
Hitsville.
The one where Al Green, Hitsville, and one where Al Green was the High Sound. And they're all primitive, like little houses, little rooms, air cartons.
The echo chamber was a toilet, was a bathroom.
Yeah. And speaking of just producers, slightly off topic, but I was just doing a bit of research about Brian Wilson, who the Paul McCartney was really a big fan of.
Yeah.
Brian Wilson was a big fan of Phil Spector, who must have been a producing, recording genius, the Wall of Sound, eh?
Genius.
Just
yes.
Yeah. So there you go.
With all the attendant problems of being a genius.
Yeah, unusual hairdo at court.
Penchant for wigs and guns.
Yeah.
Bit of.
But I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because just rolling through that album, "Sitting on Top of the World" was a great recording. Jack Bruce's singing is unbelievable. We talked about Disraeli Gears and the guitar tone, like "Born Under a Bad Sign," that solo, "Sitting on Top of the World," the guitar tone. It's almost as good or better than Disraeli Gears in some ways.
It's the height. That song is the height of that album. That, in my opinion, "Born Under a Bad Sign." That.
Oh wow! Yeah, it's amazing. And we listened to that in regular. Oh, just the solo's flawless. It's the way that he does his gliss or whatever it's called, where I don't know. Yeah, it's just
it's just hard edged, isn't it? It's hard edged when you compare that to Albert King's version, and shit, that's a great song, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, just a really amazing phrasing, really good phrasing.
So do you think that marked a significant turn in Eric Clapton's development as a player with this album?
I think that I'll just mention in my little notes here just two words: running hot. Cool. I would possibly say that was the height of his playing in his whole career.
Boom! Look at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you're a big fan over his course of 50 years, and he's clever and slick with his strat, and he knows everything. But as far as just everything coming together with the whole rock scene, he was him and Jimi Hendrix were on the top apex of these mountains, like
I suppose you know that.
I'm not going to bite.
Go on.
I mean, I think that the Eric Clapton with the Gibson and the Eric Clapton with the Fender are almost two different people.
Yes, and that's exactly what he wants, and that's exactly, as a fan, you have to listen to Clapton. You can't, in my opinion, say that Clapton is better with a Les Paul at the expense of saying that he's shit with the Stratocaster. I think
No,
you have to.
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
It's just
and I'm not saying that you're saying that, but I think what you have to do is the great thing about all of these artists that we're following and we're discussing. If you look at them in the historical periods of their career and measure them on themselves and what was happening in popular music at that time, they certainly were giants. If you look at 1968, who was the guitar god in 1968? There were two of them. It was Clapton and
Hendrix,
and Hendrix. Completely different styles.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that Clapton's was still so enamored in the blues that all his favourite guitar players, bar Buddy Guy, were all Gibson players.
Yeah. Oh, it was just natural.
Hendrix.
For what we have to remember with Eric Clapton is that he's influenced by other musicians just as much as we are. He wanted a Les Paul because Freddie King was playing a Les Paul, and he wanted a Stratocaster, Simon, because of the sound that the guys were getting from music from the Big Pink. He wanted a small.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He wanted a small Stratocaster with a small amp, which is a complete reversal of the 100-watt, 6 stacks
Fender
that they
amp.
were using.
And the Delaney and Bonnie country feel, is that right?
Yeah,
JJ Cale?
Yeah. Well, you have a Fender thing, don't you? It's the Fender, there's the Telecaster, the Stratocaster, and the Fender whatever Deluxe. The 65 reverb or whatever they are.
Do you think that
someone's trying to ring him? It always happens when someone's trying to ring him.
Is it? Oh, right. It goes funny. So we'll find out. Let's
Hey,
Arvin as well. Good morning, Arvin. How you doing? It's just to pick up on a couple of things Kubrick Lover said. I think that Kubrick Lover certainly, you get into the 70s and you have people whose job it is to mix things. They definitely, they're definitely mixers. Like Bob Clearmountain is a great, he will mix things post recording and stuff like that.
So Kubrick Lover, he's using a Stratocaster called Brownie and a little 40-watt amp that's tuned up really, really loud in the studio with Dwayne Allman, who's using his gold top Les Paul. So complete contradiction to what he'd been using 3 or 4 years earlier in the studio and on tour.
Yeah. And as we discussed on here, that first band album, Music from the Big Pink, had such an effect on him, didn't it? The thing about, not the flashy solos and playing, Robert Rolson played a Telecaster, but it's...
How's it going? Was someone trying to call you? Oh, he's...
So I'm still trying to call him. That he went back to that, didn't he? Went back to the Strat and to the Fender amps and sort of cleaned it up and went a different route. But obviously this kind of is kind of Wheels of Fire is kind of the height of that Gibson Marshall sound, isn't it, for him?
Sure. Sure.
It's where it all comes together in a sort of fiery sort of album, which, the passion, the playing is at its tops, and it obviously starting off in the Blues Breakers and, transferring it into here, with the 3-piece, of course, with a 3-piece, you've got to make a lot of noise, haven't you? It's only you as a kind of, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did someone try calling you again?
Okay. Yeah. Someone called just before. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going to happen?
I was going to make a point. As,
go on.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, in 1970, it seemed with Hendrix passing, and Eric started playing Strats. Was it a slight homage to his friend Jimmy, or not really?
You're not the first person to make that connection. So subconsciously on his behalf, maybe maybe. He talks about the fact that he wanted to play that authentic American music, and Big Pink was certainly the catalyst that gave them and a generation of musicians the courage to do that. But
was Robbie Robertson mainly using tellies or tellies and strats or strats?
Strats.
He's a telly man. Did he use strats? I thought he was a telly man.
I thought he's a telly guy.
When I think of Robbie Robertson, I only think of Telecasters.
Bob Dylan was using the strats.
Yeah,
Oh,
Bob Dylan
yeah,
played the
yeah.
strat,
Sorry.
and Robbie Robertson
right.
played. Yeah,
the tally. Sorry. Yeah,
But still,
they're
still
both
that
handsome.
sound.
I've got them mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
Robbie's the Telecaster master. That's it. But yeah,
but it's still
thin-
that clean Fender
thin-
sound, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen Steve Ray Vaughan play at telly. He's so good. He sounds just like Steve Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've heard that a lot, haven't we? Yeah, you can give them a cheap Woolworths guitar and whatever. They still sound like. How does that even work? Yes.
They'll give me a $20,000 gold, 24 karat
Yeah.
gold, gift, and I still sound like Cal. Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, all the money in the world can only make you sound like me. That's not how it's supposed to work. Yes. Yeah.
No, but yeah, no, I think that. I was telling Andrew, I just discovered this Instagram site by accident, and it shows they did a lot of touring. Eric and Cream leaving Detroit Ballroom, leaving Chicago, and then all of a sudden, and I saw that picture you put on Facebook yesterday where he's playing this, looked like an Ovation acoustic, and he was clean shaven. It looked like he'd dropped 6 years of age once Eric was clean shaven. Looked angelic.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You see that picture of him with the parted hair, he's clean shaven. He's got that acoustic, the one you put on Facebook last night.
Yeah. So he's playing a Gibson Dove.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, acoustic.
Oh, wow.
Just go back. Robbie Robertson only has a signature Fender Stratocaster.
Oh.
Even though I think of him as a thank you, Arvin. That's Arvin pointing it out. But yeah.
But did he play both in the end mainly? He played the Strat in the last waltz, didn't he? Or
I think he played,
he did
It's
too.
funny. Yeah, he played his Strat. Yeah, yes. It's just when I think of Robertson, I
brown
think
one.
of him
Yeah,
playing
yeah.
a telly one. But that's not necessarily always. These things. It's never that, is it? It's never just one thing.
Well, we've
Hardly
said
at
this
all.
before.
Everybody
Page?
just
Jimmy Page, telly or
Jimmy
Les
Page,
Paul?
the Les Paul, yeah, except the telly when he for all the early stuff and the solo on Stairway to Heaven and
Yeah. When
Solo
I
on
think
Stairway
of-
to Heaven. Wow.
When I think of Jimmy Page, I automatically think of a Les Paul, guys.
you do because of the live thing, isn't it? I mean, I always think of that that's the point, isn't it? That if you're a three piece, and we're talking about Cream being a three piece, that each person has to fill up a lot of sound. If you're in a band with two guitar players, a keyboard player, bass and drums, and then there's a lot less. The band. I mean, they had all of that. Garth Hudson. They had two keyboard players. Garth Hudson and Richard Emanuel. They both played, didn't they? Bass player and only one guitar player. But
So those humbuckers filled in a lot of sound. You think, or
you think you turn your Marshall up, you have your humbucker sound. You've got a lot of space to fill, and you're in those big halls, those auditoriums.
Someone's
The
calling him again.
Winterland. Yeah, someone's calling him again. The Winterland and stuff like that. and you've got a lot of space to fill up. You haven't you? The guitar player. Each person has a lot of space to fill up. Whereas, as I say, if you're in a band with a keyboard player, another guitar player, and a bass and a drum, all of a sudden you've got a lot less to fill up, haven't you? So you've got to find your little space, and that kind of thinner cut through sound of a Fender would be that kind of lighter sound, isn't it? I mean, Gibson's all have sort of renowned for sort of slightly darker sound because of the mahogany. Oh, look at that tonewood. Slightly darker sound. That unless you're playing on your own, then it doesn't quite sort of do it in the same way. I think, I think all those guys, like Jimmy Page, when you're playing live, you go, well, the Les Paul's got a thicker sound and stuff like that, so I can, turn the amps up and get that kind of great sound.
Kubrick Lover, I don't know what guitar Jimmy Page is using in the studio.
It's a Tele. You listen to it, and it's a Telecaster. He plays the solo on Stairway to Heaven on a Telecaster.
On obviously live.
Live, you do it on the double neck.
Yeah,
the Gibson
he's using
1275 or whatever it is.
Twin double neck. And there's also another clip where he's playing in concert where he physically changes the guitars. So
does he? Oh right, okay, yeah.
So Kubrick Lover wants to know what type of guitars you've got. Oh, he's gone again. Okay.
Look at that. So I think that they did two, didn't they, Kubrick Lover, and they released the mirror one and the dragon one and stuff, which is yours for £45,000 the pair. Andertons did they had a pair, and they still packed up. They said if you bought it, we'll turn up at your house and deliver it for you.
Yeah.
But I think Kubrick Lover, you're right. Gibson sort of has that thundery, fuzzy kind of dirty sound. I mean, you get that overdrive, that humbucker sound much more easily with a Gibson you do with a Fender. Fenders have that clean, clear, crystal, sparkly sound, don't they? Which is why Hendrix, of course, used a fuzz pedal, didn't he? Fuzz pedal to dirty it up a bit.
And on the Clapton signature Strat, they have what they call the mid boost. So that's one of the reasons why Clapton loved the Stratocaster, because it was lighter than the Les Paul. The mid boost gave him 25 decibels worth of grunge, so that he could lock in and play White Room without having to, put on a Les Paul.
Yeah, ruin his back.
Oh, of course.
How's it going?
You're popular. You're popular tonight.
Oh, Murphy's Law. Never get any phone calls, and people call during the show. It's just maybe it's just because everyone's finished work and they're coming home, and that's when the people call.
Yeah, probably.
Oh well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Sorry, but getting back to the guitar tone.
Yeah.
We were just kind of discussing the difference between Les Pauls and Strats, and how if you're playing live you'd want that humbucker sound and stuff, because Fender Strat had a much more clean, sparkly sound, and if you're playing
it's great, and we can't change time, but Gibson suited the Blues Breakers and Cream. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Tony Iommi playing a Stratocaster with Black Sabbath, or Angus Young playing a Strat? It's just not going to work.
No, it isn't, and they have a sound, but also it's not only it's the Les Paul, it's the 3 years of Clapton with his Les Paul and his Marshalls, isn't it? Starting off with a 50-watt Marshall, the thing you can get into the back of your car. But moving on, but turning it up, and then obviously playing bigger places like the Winterland is a big arena, so you need lots of amps. So you need the Marshall 100-watt amps, which you turn up, because obviously PAs are not kind of what they are now. So you have to turn the amps up so it's loud, and you have to have several of them all chained together. Look at that, walls of Marshalls! Come on.
Maybe that's why Cream was fighting internally. Because they're playing so loud, they couldn't hear each other. So off the stage, they thought they were ignoring each other, but actually talking to each other, just couldn't hear each other.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. That's exactly why they were fighting in Cream during the 60s, and in 2005 when they had the reunion, the same thing happened again. And Clapton talks about it. They were arguing about each other's volume.
Sound.
Yeah, so Ginger Baker is whinging and whining because he can't hear himself drumming because Jack Bruce's amp is turned up too loud.
Shivers. Yeah.
Because
we know that jazz is a very quiet sound, and they've got delicate fingers. But obviously, you never see jazz played in a Royal Albert Hall, or not much. Mainly small clubs, eh?
Yeah,
Coffee shop.
Yeah.
So it's heavy jazz rock. Doesn't quite work, but it works. But it worked just for a short time because it wasn't going to continue because it's just too intense.
I think so. Yeah, I think that intensity, burns out, doesn't it? In a kind of, after a while, and it's very difficult to maintain that. I'm sure that's probably true, isn't it? Because they bolt on necks and all of that is easier to fix than get another neck bolted on, carry on.
Slightly cheaper too.
Yeah, and apparently, I don't know if this is true, but someone told me recently that most of the time when he was smashing his guitars, he was just using a cheap guitar. It wasn't a proper Fender. So
no, he had some that he bashed up already, hadn't he? They just smashed.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonia, how you doing?
Honky Tonk Man and what's
hey
WWF.
Sonia, it's been a long time. How's it going?
Yeah.
Sorry, Carl, I'm just interrupting. Carl and I, sorry, Simon and I are just saying good day to Sonia. Can you see the chat? Do you remember Sonia?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's been a long time. Hope's all's good. I think the last time we were talking to Sonia, there was something going on. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, mate. You were too busy on a
carry on.
You're on a
on a roll.
On a roll.
Kubrick lover, yes, he did. Malcolm Young used a Gretsch with only one pickup in it.
Oh wow, yeah.
Getting
back to that Gibson with that Marshall, there's just that undeniable crunch sound that Fender can't do.
Yes, the development
we hear
Jim
it with
Marshall
Slash.
did.
We hear it with Slash. We hear it with Jimmy Page, Paul Kossoff, Peter Green to a lesser extent when he's rocking out a bit. Obviously, big time Cream. That just certain crunch that the Gibson and Marshall has.
But it's not that heavy a sound, is it? I mean, the whole point about that is that it's a kind of bigger, thicker sound than a Fender, but it's not. The classic thing is how little. Like if you AC/DC are the classic thing for that, how little actually. Overdrive. They don't use overdrive on their amps. They don't even turn them up that loud. If you look at the Premier Guitar rig rundown on their stuff, it's amazing. That the way that they set things up. They don't. Because they got this. It gives them some crunch, but it's not like massively distorted. It's not. They don't use pedals to get. It's not even massive amounts of drive. It just has a particular crunchy sound that is really good, but it's definitely more of a rock and roll sound. It's certainly not AC/DC nowhere near a sort of metal sound or anything like that. It's worth a look just to see. The Gretsch doesn't have a particularly heavy sound, and neither does the SG. They have humbuckers,
right?
But so you get that kind of two guitars with sort of humbuckery, so you get a kind of thickness to it, but it's not like massive distortion. And that's, I think, when you see people play it, they get their drive pedals out and turn it up, and they get massive, and it's not that. That's not the sound, And obviously, you turn it up so it's loud, and then you put it for a PA that's really loud, you get that big sound, but it's not massively overdriven, and Hendrix using the fuzz pedal was, a sort of, I think, a way of thickening up the sound, but it doesn't, it's not massively distorted, is it? He kind of wrung a load of sounds out of his guitar by feedback and other stuff, but so I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that it's that yes, there's that sound, but the sound of a Marshall cranked is not the sound of a sort of a great distortion and a great drive sound that we kind of think of now. You think of having that, get your blues driver pedal out or whatever, which is
Yeah.
and I think that is an approximation, but it's more drive and more. There's a lot more in that than they were then, really.
And maybe the common denominator, because Richie Blackmore played a Strat and then Hendrix played a Strat, right?
Yeah.
The common denominator with all these guys is the Marshall amp.
Yes. Yeah. And cranked.
Because we've talked about the Stones, we've talked about Peter Green. Eric Clapton never really used Fender amps, did he? Till when? The 70s?
Yeah,
Or
so
did
he was using
Clapton.
Fender dual Showmans when he was with Derek and the Dominoes.
Okay.
That's
Delaney and Bonnie probably sure.
yeah. So
what I'm saying is the Marshall amps were synonymous with heavy rock, and still to this day, where a lot of the Gibson guys flirted between Marshall amps and Fender amps, but you never saw Fender guitar players with Fender amps.
and the rock and roll blues rock.
I think there's a bit of a division, Carl, between, and we've discussed this a bit, the division between America and the UK. I think if you go to someone like Paul Butterfield, it's Mike Bloomfield rather. Mike Bloomfield uses Fenders and Telecasters, right? And there's that kind of difference. And I think probably the Americans are using much more Fender Bassmans, Showmans.
Yeah.
And their sound is different. So whereas, because obviously Marshall is
the black blues.
Black blues guys, they're not using Marshalls. I think probably because Marshalls would be almost impossible to get if you're a blues guy living in Chicago or wherever. That's going to be hard.
Without bringing race into it, Marshall was a white rock sound.
Well, British rock sound.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Jimi Hendrix used them because he was in the UK. I mean, that's the interesting one. Jimi Hendrix was black, but so it's not a color distinction. It's a geographical distinction. I think that Hendrix came here. Hendrix in America didn't use Marshalls. Hendrix in America would have used Fender amps.
And maybe Marshall, in a short amount of time, figured out a way to have that beautiful J45 sound. But let's just add 4 more 10-inch speakers and a couple of stacks and a Big Mac, and
you're away.
Let's blow this place apart.
And what we have to remember too is that a lot of the guitar players that we're talking about were heavily influenced by their idols. One of the reasons why Eddie Van Halen used Marshall amps is because Clapton was using Marshall amps. So there's plenty of pictures with him playing Fender amps. He's using Fender amps as in the tune-up rooms and stuff like that. But when he's out on stage, and the first thing that he bought when he had some serious money, he wanted a Marshall stack because Clapton had a Marshall stack.
See, and everybody, and there's everybody, when he went on tour, Clapton, they went around the country. Every blues guitarist in the country went, right, I need to have a Les Paul and a JCM 45, didn't they? The 50-watt combo that he used in the Blues Breakers. Yeah, I think I've read that it had that kind of ripple effect. And people like Kossoff, they went to see Clapton play, and then they went, God, we've got to have that kind of thing. It's.
Do you think did Stevie Ray Vaughan have a Marshall head as part of his setup?
Yes.
Yeah, Marshall.
Marshall
had Dumbles, didn't he? And
what's a Marshall head? Is that the?
Well, it's just the amp. It's just the amp separately from the speakers. It's not a combo.
Oh, so if you've got an integrated amp, or you've got a
so he's got the Marshall head, and he's going out to whatever speaker system he's got. So it's going into either his Fenders, or it's going into his Showman cabinets, or it's going into that Vibra Tone Leslie Fender Leslie. So that wasn't but the Marshall's very integral into in his sound. He's
completely Marshall.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, Kubrick lover. I have seen the Rolling Thunder review Bob Dylan thing. It's a fascinating insight into Bob Dylan, and you're absolutely right. See, Kubrick lover says that in the Bob Dylan this is a 70s, but the Rolling Thunder review, they all using Fender amps, because Bob Dylan, because Bob Dylan's not, he wouldn't be using Marshalls, Bob Dylan, never.
And I've got to say, just from an aesthetic point of view, a visual point of view, I do like the Fender amps and all the tweed, but that black amp with the gold writing Marshall and the gold knobs, it's really just cool. Simple and strong. It looks great, eh? Doesn't it look great?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's iconic, as my kids would say. It's an iconic. It is an iconic image, and it's just of course that Jim Marshall based it on the Fender Bassman circuit. So it is actually based on a Fender.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, no, it's one of those things where you take an idea. The Boogie was based. Yeah, they're all based on Fenders, probably mostly. But I think the interesting part is, of course, you can't. I think one of Jim Marshall's, I'm sure I've read this, that one of his issues was that obviously you couldn't get the same parts. You couldn't get the same things in the UK. So you start using other things, and because you use other things, you change the sound because you're using different transistors or different whatever. I don't know what's in them. Not an electronics person at all. Where's Hack when we need him? He's electronics man.
No, you're right. So they were making the Marshalls in competition to the Fender Bassmans, which obviously, Simon, you couldn't get in the UK at that time because you guys had trade embargoes, or there was something going on.
It just didn't get shipped around like that, did it? In a way.
Yeah. And you had a different voltage system, 240 and 120. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which would probably, although, Cream would have, obviously Clapton used Marshalls in America and Cream, so they must have found a way around of doing it. I don't know what they did.
Voltage converter, yeah.
They have a voltage converter.
They were importing them then.
Box.
They were bringing them in, Marshalls.
Were they?
Yeah, they were being sold then.
The other thing is, you get the feeling Randall pretty much copied the whole Marshall look, didn't they?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah. And orange amps probably quite fun if you lived in California on the beach and you had a little 2-story little, sea house, but not the greatest looking amp, I don't think.
No,
orange.
Peter Green played them for a couple of years.
Yeah,
orange. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I would love guitar certain songs. Andrew and I talked about Born in a Bad Sign, great solo. The solo in Sunshine of Your Love, White Room, the Wah Wah, Strange Brew. I'd love to know which guitars he was using for each song.
Okay, well, it's documented that he was using the SG, his Gibson Firebird, and a Les Paul on that tour. In the Winterland, and is it the Fillmore that?
Yeah. And did the three?
You'd have to repeat that question, mate. Sorry, we didn't hear. You froze.
Oh, did the 335 come in towards the end?
Yeah. He didn't use the 335 on apparent. Well, I could be wrong, but according to the information I've read, he didn't use the 335 in America on that part of the tour.
Oh wow, amazing! And like Simon said before, 4 albums. 2.5 years. So that Goodbye Cream is a bit of filler in there, I think. It's not really, it's an album, but it's a patch job. However, it's got Badge, and let's face it, who doesn't like Badge?
Great song.
He's still got a great song on it, and I think that you could, I think quite a lot of albums, because obviously, 67, 68 is kind of where the album starts to take off, doesn't it? The album as an art form, as a thing, is starting, you go back to 66, 65, it's very much kind of singles and Kubrick lover, slippery fingers. It's you know that it that you know that you start, so people are exploring, aren't they? You know, and then obviously if you're doing 2 albums a year, you've got to make, you know, if you're doing 24 songs a year, that's a lot, especially if you're touring, you know, touring and writing and, you know, trying to record stuff. It's a lot of work.
Do you think Atlantic, obviously we're enjoying Cream's success and we're blown away or sidelined or blindsided is better. We're blindsided with them breaking up, that in order for them to cash in, because they did release Goodbye Cream 4 months after they disbanded. Let's just get a bit more lemon. Let's just get a bit more juice out of this lemon. Is that right? Yeah. Was there a contractual obligation, or the Ermit Hartgen and Jerry Wexler said, we got to get what's going good?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
And, you know, the band gets some money for that, you know, and Back then it was still... It was a win-win situation, wasn't it, for Cream? You know, they weren't being completely ripped off like some of the artists at that time.
Yeah. And you've read a lot about Eric. Were they making big money in those Cream days?
Oh, touring was the big thing. Absolutely, that's when he had the money to buy Hurtwood. You know, the mansion. So yeah, we all know.
He still got.
Yeah, and we all know that, you know, the Rolling Stones, the same thing. It's touring. It's not necessarily, you know, releasing the records that makes you the money. America was the cash cow. You know, that's where the money was.
That's why some of these bands, these one-hit wonders, still have to tour just to pay the bills.
Yeah. Well, there's no records. You're not making anything now on any release. If you're streaming it, aren't you? You're not making a thing.
Yeah. It's a bit like porn. It's all for free. You know? So everything's, you know, bootlegs. I'm finding this out with real estate. Things. Big Beach Boys song is a background song, but it might get taken down because of copyright laws.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think
you will.
It will. Depends what it is. Well, you might not get it taken down, but what you might do is it'll get a copyright strike. So somebody will claim it as their as their song. And if you made any, not that you're likely to, if you made some money from it, then obviously some of that money would go to the rights of the song.
There was a theory that you could use 30 seconds or less of a song. It's called the fair trade, but it's proven wrong. You can't use
That's
nothing.
Correct.
Not on YouTube. I think it applies to someone like the BBC. I think they can use up to 30 seconds, and then you can talk over it and not. Whereas I don't think any such thing necessarily applies in YouTube world, because that's American, isn't it? So it's different.
The only thing you can do, Carl, is get a third-party recording of that song and use that rather than the original.
Yeah, because I've been looking on YouTube, and there's obviously cover versions of that song. But can I use that?
Yes.
Yeah. See, it depends. You see, what's interesting is, I don't know if you watched any of the Rick Beato, What Makes His Song So Great? And quite often he's got a second channel, which is his live channel. And I've seen him go on and he'll play some things on that to see if they get blocked, see if the video gets blocked, or whether it just gets a copyright strike. So someone like Fleetwood Mac, you know, for instance, you know, they are, you know, or the Eagles, you know, they'll take your video down.
Notorious.
So don't use any Eagle stuff. But, you know, a lot of other people are quite happy for your music to be used, but they won't take you down. You will have a copyright strike.
The Eagles will take you down if you're doing a guitar lesson.
They'll take you down.
If you're showing a guitar lesson, they'll take you down.
Well, the Jimi Hendrix estate's notorious.
Yeah.
Didn't
they got they got Norman's Rare Guitars to take down one of their videos because I think Mark Agnesi had played some Hendrix stuff, you know, to demonstrate one of the Strats, and I think they made it. They let you who's complaining. They got taken down.
That's correct.
Far out, golly.
Talking of that,
okay. Yeah, it's interesting. So they made a little bit of money off writing songs and on hot singles, but touring was, like you said before,
Cash cow.
a cash cow, like a $10,000 check each night or whatever.
yeah,
25 grand.
Wow.
25 grand.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Big money.
So
Shucks.
I'm just sort of having a look at the Marshall thing. I mean, the Marshall thing is based on a Fender Bassman, but interestingly, they changed the valves, for instance, to KT66s from EL34s, which gave them a more aggressive sound. Gave a bit more.
And Marshalls were synonymous with Celestion speakers.
Yeah, Celestians, 412 Celestians, yeah. So different.
Fender,
you start doing different things because
was
cheaper.
Fender using Celestians or not?
No,
Not
Fender
till
used
later.
Jensen speakers
Jensen's not
Okay.
until later on.
in the basement. They used Jensens, but
Okay.
So
just a couple
so,
little things like that changed it, eh?
Yeah, change the speakers, obviously, and change the valves,
That's true.
because obviously they were cheaper in the UK. KT6s were cheaper than EL6L6s, and so they did that instead. Which is that kind of thing. But a really nice fact is when Jim Marshall's first one, they put it in his shop, and the first day they sold 25 of them.
Wow.
The first day putting his shop, like everybody just wanted one.
Can you imagine being in England doing it? Just came out and ad the paper. Jim Marshall looking for amp assemblers and fabricators. He had to hire a lot of people, to keep up.
Yeah. So 3 people bought them first day: Richie Blackmore, Pete Townsend, and Big Jim Sullivan.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Yeah,
Far
Big
out.
Jim and not Little Jim. Big Jim Sullivan was one of the great session guitarists of the '60s, and he was known
an
as
Australian guy.
No, Big Jim. Well, he might be, but Big Jim Sullivan. He was like he was called Big Jim Sullivan, right? And Jimmy Page was called Little Jimmy. So Big Jim and Little Jim.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the two.
Well, it's quite interesting. You brought up a good point about amps, without getting too far off the topic of cream. But amps do different things. You got live amps and you got studio amps.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah. Well, there's that whole thing with Jimmy Page, isn't there? He recorded a load of stuff on his little Supro, suitably mic'd up, and not necessarily, standing there with massive Marshalls. He probably did a bit of that, but certainly the earlier stuff, didn't he?
Wonder how they to remain authentic. That's what we like about Steve Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix and possibly Richie Blackmore. Is how do they transfer the studio sound to the live sound?
Volume.
I don't think they did. Or just played loud, didn't they? I don't think.
Okay.
Do you think they viewed them as? I don't think they viewed them as the same thing at all.
No.
I think they viewed. If you think about Hendrix, Hendrix in the studio, certainly, get past the first 2 albums, and there's massive amounts of experimentation and, doing also, which not any attempt by him, if you think about it, he's pretty much
sound.
to replicate the sound live, did he? He did not. No attempt by Hendrix to do that.
No.
Stevie brought his live sound into the studio, didn't he?
So
That's the other way, yeah.
So Stevie Ray Vaughan's unique in that sense that a lot of musicians aren't gifted in that sense, from what I understand, in being able to take their live sound into the studio. Now, Clapton talks about it quite a few times, that when during the 70s and 80s, he was frustrated because he couldn't get the sound that he wanted when he was playing live. So he wasn't getting that sound. So in a sense, he wasn't concentrating or delivering as much as he should have when he was playing live.
Yeah.
But when he was recording, at least he had a bit of control over that. It wasn't until the late 1980s, early 1990s, where he started using those boutique amps where he could start getting that sound that he wanted live. So, yeah, interesting. But Simon makes a good point. Stevie Ray, Jimi Hendrix, they didn't want to replicate their their studio sound live. They couldn't. And
Yeah.
to be fair, the vibe back then, they didn't expect it. They just wanted to hear something and see the band.
No, and I think in that that kind of, we've talked about it, that kind of artistic growth and people doing, that that actually, what you did in the studio and what you did live were two different things, but they were pushing forward. So Cream were doing a lot of improvisation and playing, and that live thing is different to when you go in the studio, and you view them as two different art forms and to be viewed in two different ways. And I think that, obviously with things like Sgt. Pepper's and stuff like that, you start to see what you can do in the studio. And what you can do in the studio, and Sgt. Pepper's or Pet Sounds is they're very good examples of, it's very difficult to reproduce those sounds live. You can reproduce Sgt. Pepper's live without, dozens of musicians and all sorts of, running up and down. And in the 60s, that wasn't really possible. So you just didn't do it. Hendrix went out with his blues trio and played as a trio, and he pretty much played as a trio all his career, till he died, didn't he? I mean, he didn't, Billy Cox and he swapped them around a bit, but he was still just that trio, wasn't he? He didn't suddenly appear with five other musicians and kind of, and those things about having to, you record 3 or 4 different guitar parts for in a song in a studio, and then you've got to decide what you're going to play live. Which bits am I going to play?
That's why I get disappointed with ZZ Top. They're 3-piece. I really like them, but they just don't sound as good live because
well, you can't, because there's more guitars and there's more.
Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
But I do you think Eric, when he played Badge, was just giving us a hint it was going to come out in the future, because that was a different type of guitar sound and solo to Cream?
I don't think we can. You can't disregard the influence that George Harrison was having on Eric Clapton at that stage. So we often talk about the Big Pink album having an effect on Eric Clapton, but Simon mentioned it earlier. Delaney and Bonnie, George Harrison was on that tour when they were touring Scandinavia too. So, that melodic tuned down a couple of notches. Yeah, again, Eric Clapton being influenced by other guys.
Yeah.
And he was always open to that, wasn't he, America? I mean, it's obviously, different things going on and figuring out.
So what did George? We know that George is a clever player, a rockabilly player, melodic. Obviously, him and John came up with these amazing chord progressions that'll stand the test of time as far as instantly recognizable to a musical ear and a non-musical ear. But what did George teach Eric's melody or chord progressions or rock or folk or?
Well, George Harrison was never the great flash player, was he? If you think about it, for George, it's all about the band and playing within the context of the song. It's not, extended solos and kind of, all that blues jamming and stuff like that. So in a sense, what George Harrison brings to Eric is a bit like what the band bring, that much more integrated playing, that much more within the song. You can play a little solo, you can do, but it's also about the nice little melodic bits. It's about the nice chords and stuff. And I think that in a sense,
fitting within the
not
framework
a different
or
space.
Well, you've got to remember too, Carl,
of the song.
The house band that George Harrison used for All Things Must Pass was Derek and the Dominoes. Eric Clapton's all over that album.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And
so George on that Badge taught him, Eric, how to construct not necessarily a pop song, but a radio, not a radio friendly, but a classic rock song maybe. Or I'm How would you describe Badge? It's not heavy rock. It's not hard rock.
Two guys on a Sunday morning having a cup of tea, writing a song together.
Wow.
I think it's I think part of it is just about you're finding different sounds, you're finding different different songs come to you for different and being able to do something a bit different. It's not live is, as we've said, is a different thing. You're going out, you're jamming, you're playing long versions of Spoonful or whatever. But in the studio, there's a certain amount of experimentation going on, isn't there? What sounds can make. You must have seen, everybody's doing it.
And you found there's probably less drugs in that song, Badge. Instead of laughing, purple fishes laughing through their fingers, and all of a sudden the lyrics kind of make sense, eh?
Yeah. Mind you, that is Pete Brown and not them. Remember, so so it's the external lyric writer. So.
and Eric loved that bridge on Badge so much he replicated it on Bad Love.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So that's a Leslie
comes
cabinet
back
with some open chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key of A minor, I think.
Yeah, and you you would say, wouldn't you, that
have I? Oh no, there was a bit of Pete Brown there. Have I told you about the swans that they live in the park?
See,
there was a bit of Pete Brown there. Who the hell cares about swans living in a park?
Oh well, but John, Carl, if you go to any park in London, so you go to Hyde Park in London,
swans.
There are swans on the ponds, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's just a factual thing in the UK. A lot of swans on the river and stuff.
Speaking of parks, Simon, if you've walked through there, have you ever seen a pressed rat and a warthog?
I've never seen a pressed rat and a warthog. No.
What is that?
Kubrick wants to know what guitars you've got, please, Carl.
355.
He wants to Kubrick. Yeah. So, but maybe you want to give him a bit of a rundown on the guitars that you've had, because you've had Strats, you've had a few guitars. A little bit about what.
Yeah. What
guitar history.
I want to get a few more. I was a Gibson Les Paul guy when I started, and I should have been a Tele guy because everything I was playing was the wrong sound. But I just love Gibson Les Pauls, and then got into acoustics in America because I lived in a small apartment and noise was an issue. So I had a Guild and then a Martin. But then I got into a little bit of money towards the end before I came home. I bought a Stratocaster, a Telecaster, and a Gibson, which Andrew's seen them all, and tried to basically what's it called in a limited amount of money and guitars, try and get all the sound together, but you can't because you got Gretches and it just goes on and on. But I'd love to own a Firebird one day. I think they're quite fascinating. I don't know why.
Yeah. Hack had a Firebird for a year, didn't he? Just going back to Badge. Interestingly, the other writer on Badge is George Harrison.
Mm.
Yeah.
He's the other writer of it, which kind of makes a bit of sense.
The other thing interesting about Badge is it became a staple part of Eric's live shows for eternity.
Oh,
yeah.
A real crowd pleaser.
Kind of fitted in the new, fitted better into his new direction than some of the other stuff.
That's something I just figured out today. It's almost like he's so clever. It gave us a little taste test, a swan song, a parting, if you will. I can't say those big words like you can, Simon. Well, I said poltergeist. Almost gave us a fraction of a.
That's just Tourette's.
Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist, that's it. Poltergeist is a different thing.
Zeitgeist, of what he was about to do in the next, because he had Blind Faith and Derek and the Dynamos. Yeah. What do you call himself? The travelling journeyman or the constant journeyman?
He had an album called
of an album that came in '89 called Journeyman. But that's
what he is. Yeah. So fascinating. I'm glad this Cream Part 3's it's tying up quite nice.
That's
you know,
correct.
The fresh cream, the trippy Disraeli gears, the woman tone, the wah wah, the live stuff, the great singles, and then the parting with badge.
Which
Yeah,
and
yeah.
which they never played live, did they? Cream never played that live until 2005, the reunion tour.
And they kind of started. They kind of left how they started with a bit of sense of humour.
Yeah.
So what was that goofy wrapping paper, and then anybody for tennis?
Yeah.
Yes.
What the hell was that about?
Yeah. Don't
The
know.
theme for the Savage Seven, whatever that
Is that
was.
Dada? Do we blame Dada? Dadaism for
Dadaism.
anyone for tennis? Because we can blame Dadaism for wrapping paper, can't we?
Is that a
Yes,
chord progression?
yeah.
Is it?
No, the Dadaism is this. What DADA? Yeah, it's like Gad, only shorter.
No, it's an
Well, they figured it out.
artistic movement. Yeah.
They figured out how the brain works. And they reckon that all the pop songs use the same 5 chords and the slightly
That's
different
correct.
sequence.
That's correct. Keep it simple, mate. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
You make $1 million.
Well, Neil Young is clever. He used A minor 7 and D, and then he used the F major 7 and an E minor, and he just had this unique sound.
Yep.
So yeah. But no. I mean, I find Cream fascinating. I think that some of it's a bit too intense for me, but out of those 4 albums, you could almost edit it to 2 amazing albums.
Awesome.
Any
that's
classic
true.
rock show,
Yeah.
any classic rock station, you can be guaranteed at least once a day they'll either do White Room or Sunshine of Your Love.
Kubrick
Go on,
is called
Ed.
Slow Hand because when he used to break a guitar string, this is back in the Yardbird days, they used to come out with what they call the slow hand clap. So people
Yeah.
would clap.
Because he took
When he
so
would
long to
change-
change them, didn't he? He took take
Yeah.
ages to change the strings. So they used to give
So-
him the slow
Oh,
hand
really?
clap. Yeah.
So
why it's called
so
slow.
they'd clap. So it had nothing to do with his ability with woman or his ability to play the guitar slowly.
Everything's to do with his ability to change strings quickly
Yes.
or not, as the case may be.
And the British sense of humour.
Yeah, of course.
Speaking of,
He's
do
frozen.
you
You
my
want
back?
Go on.
Yeah, no, you
Talk.
need to
Yeah,
take
yeah,
it
you're right.
from-
Yeah. Say it again.
Have you ever demoed a guitar in Bristol Music Store?
Have I?
Yeah, just played around.
Yeah. I did a few weeks ago. Went and tried out some amps because I'm thinking about buying a new amp. But,
Have you ever just piss off any employee you played the Sunshine of Your Love riff?
no. Get fined. No, I didn't actually. And no one would have known if
Out.
I had. Yes,
Get
out, get out. With that. Will you stop that? Actually, they might not have known what it was, to be honest,
dare
Carl.
you.
They're all a bit young. But we were in a small room. Me and Dave were in a small room trying out. We played those new Fender transistor amps. You know the sort of the Blues Deluxe, but the transistor ones.
Oh yeah. The new
We
ones.
tried,
out.
tried
Oh,
those,
wow.
yeah. If I was a touring musician, I would
buy
be
one?
taking that out. I would be taking that out like a shot. It weighs
Wow.
25 pounds. You lift it up, literally lift. One finger, but it's really light. You got the sound. No moving parts. Why wouldn't you? And it's 95% of the sound. And
Amazing, isn't it, Simon? What they
Yeah.
can get with this modelling
Well,
gear now.
it's very
So-
clever
so-
that Hang on. Oh, you've gone all frozen, Carl. Say that again.
Oh, everything's wireless. They don't use guitar leads. as
No, it's
much?
not wireless. Fender have used their modeling technology to create these albums that are basically sort of transistor. They're solid state amps, not.
Yeah.
But what they've done is instead of having 500 sounds, all that Fender Mustang stuff where they've got hundreds of sounds. Basically, they put all the technology into producing one sound. So the Fender Twin, basically buy a Fender Twin, but you buy the sort of transistor version of Fender Twin. So all their modeling technology has gone into creating the sound just of a Fender Twin, which is incredibly clever. Really, that's the thing to do, is that so that you get 95% of the sound of it, but you get half the weight, no moving parts. It's much more robust than your valve amps and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
For
So
playing
you can
live,
can take a knock.
yeah, you could put it in the back of a van, bash it around a bit, and they cost half what the proper Fender valve amps cost. And you can see that from a touring perspective, it's a bit like taking a modeling app, isn't it? You take your Kemper on tour or your Axe Effects or whatever. You don't take your unless you're Joe Bonamassa, you don't take your Fender Blues Deluxe on tour, because it's for a lot of it, because it just they're heavy and they get broken and they fizz and pop. None of this happens. And it's I think it's it's a really interesting move by Fender, and I think that probably all any other manufacturer worth their salt should be looking at that and going, we should do that, because it's one thing. It's not that thing about hundreds of sounds and different amps and all of that stuff, which is okay. It's just one thing, and you get it 95% right. It's just really works really well.
That black guy Larry that's on the Johnny Bean show with the dreadlocks.
Larry Mitchell, yeah. Larry Mitchell, yeah, great player.
He just takes his laptop and his iPad. All his effects are on that.
Yeah, he uses Axe Effects, doesn't he? And he has all his sounds. He can just download them onto. He just asks for an Axe Effect.
Yep. Plugs that into a PA system and away he goes.
Yeah, deluxe reverb. So
probably sounds terrible.
No, it sounds great.
No, I think that's great. I think
Carl, the modeling stuff that's available today is phenomenal. It's fantastic.
And in terms of the ease, that if you're a touring musician like he is, where you're playing with pickup bands and you're playing with pickup musicians and stuff like that, that carting amps around can be hard work, whereas, so basically you're turning up, you're saying, to the venue, provide me with an amp, so it'll be a Fender or whatever.
It's amazing because myself,
and I can get my sound out of anything. Yeah.
And there was a couple of guys from Auckland that came down, a couple of island guys, really talented, and they had acoustic, a stripped down drum kit, and an iPad, and I think the iPad gave them the lyrics if they got caught out and forgot words, and obviously the chord progression. So, what happened to pen and paper?
So what Larry Mitchell does is he plugs that there, which is a like a interface. So he plugs that into his laptop. He plugs his amp into there. Okay.
Wow.
And then there's an XLR out, which he plugs into the PA system, and away he goes. That's it.
Wow.
I'll send you some links of him playing live, and you'll be blown away, mate.
Wow.
Yeah, but so I agree, and I think that's why. Was it Mark Knopfler started using Kempers to play live? Because it's he doesn't have to lug his own gear, which is half the battle. It's
20 different amp settings in one box, Simon.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So you get all your sounds, all your classic Fender, 50s and 60s Fender amps. You profile them in a Kemper where you play them, and I think then obviously just go and Kemper has an out to the PA, and you just have a cab, any old cab in a storm, and it very robust, kind of, because there's much less moving parts than a
yeah. I'm a bit of a purist. I like, for example, a solid wood guitar or a lead and a tube amp. But as far as far as a guy who's gigging around in small clubs, cafes, I can understand. And oh wow,
because
I can see why they utilize that.
See, that's a deluxe reverb, right? But the only difference is you've got the Tone Master thing down in the bottom corner. But other than that, it's a and that's what they've done. They've done this kind of amazing kind of, and they are. So it's not a bit blurred, but
and it's getting great reviews. Awesome.
Yeah, it's getting great reviews. Well, you can see that as I say, it does 95% of the sound. It's not a valve amp, and there is a difference. But you can get the sound. And as I say, it weighs 25 pounds, not 50 pounds. It costs 2/3 of what the valve amp costs. You get, and it's much more robust in terms of, its actual being able to put, So in terms of being a live musician, you'd be really tempted to take it instead of I've got a 22-year-old PV Delta Blues, and it's starting to, you can tell that it's starting to feel its age a bit,
Hey, Jack Daniels.
Hey, Jack, how you doing? Nice to see you. No amps means no need for a tech. Indeed, Jack, I think there's a certain amount of that. You still need somebody to... Oh, what's going on? Is that Carl? So I think, I think you still got to have somebody to carry the cabs. Hefty speaker cats, but I can see that technology moves on, and as Andrew says, the sound of them these days, you've got to work at it a bit, but I think you can get fantastic sounds out of them that will suit if you just take a Helix, or you take just take that pedal board, you can then plug into anything that a venue So, but,
I'm sold, Simon. I'm sold on all this modelling gear. All this modelling gear.
You've got some, haven't you?
Yeah. It's just phenomenal. It's even the Yamaha THR amps are phenomenal. They're just out of this world.
Which is kind of what you'd expect, isn't it? You get into the technology is a constant. There's not much the innovation is in a refinement of things, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a refinement of the last 20 years. So each generation, each iteration of them is better than the last. And you get to a point where it is 95% of and the practicalities of a lot of this stuff outweigh the 5% or 10% loss in sound you might get. That, let's be fair, the majority of people are never going to notice if you're playing in a band setting. If you're playing with another guitar player, bass, drums, and a keyboard player, what you're playing through, is not, people aren't sitting there going, listen to that.
Well, I think you're limiting yourself if you're buying just a valve amp. If you're just buying a valve amp compared to a modelling amp, and it's got to be a good one, because there's probably some crappy ones out there too. I don't know what they are, but most of the stuff that we're talking about in this show and most of the shows we watch, the gear's pretty good, and you can play anything from clean, pristine country music all the way up to high gain, Simon. You got it all covered.
Yeah. I think, although, do you not think that as soon as you plug a guitar straight into your amp, that's the sound of your amp. As soon as you use pedals and stuff like that, you are having the sound of the pedal or the pedals. And then the amp, whatever it is, becomes just a way of projecting that sound.
Hey, Mickey.
Hi, Mickey. How you doing? Nice of you to drop in.
Again, I can only talk about my experience. I've got rid of all my pedals. I just don't
I think
use them.
No, but I think that almost any app then just becomes a way of projecting the sound. And it, I'm the classic example of that. I've got my old Boss GT3. And what you're getting when you're choosing a sound of that is you're getting the sound of the Boss GT3, not the sound of the PV.
Well, I'm going to echo here what Jack Daniels is saying. I've got Rocket 5 monitors. I've got a Focusrite interface here. I've got my laptop computer. I've got my aux box. It's all great. It's good.
But I do agree with Jack Daniels. He says, there's always a chance of options paralysis, and I think that's true. You can get, you can go down the rabbit hole of fiddling and twiddling and twiddling and fiddling, and actually, yes, getting on with playing, not playing is absolutely. So I completely completely understand that
That's why you've got
as
to
a
really
position.
appreciate, as much as we love electric guitars, just the simplicity of an acoustic guitar.
Got to have one.
But,
Got to have one.
Even the simplicity of an electric guitar just plugs straight into your amp, and working out what you can do with that. I was mucking around on my Chapman Les Paul that I was the other day, and in the middle position, obviously you've got both pickups on, but I was experimenting with winding off the volume on the neck pickup, and then like what happens when you adjust the volume of the two things, so you adjust the balance between the two pickups and stuff like that. It's it's like really, I was like, oh, look at that. I'm sure everyone else has been doing it for years, but so it's personal. But I wasn't just experimenting, going, oh no, I never sort of done that before. As a kind of just a way of getting different sounds out of it. So I'm keen on just I like just plugging in direct to the amp and just seeing what I get direct. But
I just want to qualify something too with you guys that I said a couple of weeks ago when Hack was on, and I don't think he understood what I was trying to say. I said to him that I can hear the difference when I play my Les Paul acoustically with that maple cap as opposed to my copy, as opposed to my Stratocaster. They all sound different. My Les Paul's, my Les Paul acoustically sounds different. So, and then he was saying something about, because obviously he doesn't believe that tone wood makes a difference. So I watched another show that he's talking, he's saying that it's all about strings and pickups and string height and amplifiers. He was hinting that wood doesn't make a difference. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to say that wood does make a difference, at least to my ear.
I think it's the real thing about those things is you've got a whole set of components that go to making an electric guitar up. You have maybe a maple neck, you've got a maple cat, you've got a mahogany body, and you've got pickups, and you've got an amp with a particular speaker in it, and blah blah blah. The interesting part is that it's really about what percentage of difference those things make. Does having mahogany body? I mean, I notice a definite difference in my this one, my Chapman here, which is a mahogany body guitar, than my Strat or my Tele, which are and I noticed between the Strat and the Tele because they got whether it's a huge difference, and actually whether you plug them in, you're getting that's and you've got obviously the sound of the amp, and you've got the sound of the speaker, and you've got the pickups, make a hell of a bigger difference. I think that it all makes it. It's just how much you think it does.
I think it's common knowledge that I think the Fender Strat or the Tele body's older, and then the necks are a combination of either maple or rosewood. Maple is a fraction brighter, the rosewood's a fraction warmer. And then you go a step further with the Gibson ES355, which I'm fortunate to have, is the ebony neck, which is a really dense wood. So I'm in favour of woods making subtle differences. I think
frozen up.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
I'll take your word for it, Jack. I'm not going to hit myself just to see if there is a difference. I'll believe you.
I'm not going to either. Look, I don't profess to be an expert, guys. All I know is that my guitars sound different acoustically, and all these guitars here on the back behind me, they all sound differently. And in the same amp, even though there's one person playing it. So, yeah.
So it's I think as I say, for me, it's about percentage. You've got 100%, and how much the speaker makes, and how much the pickups make, and how much the wood makes. Is a kind of is a division of that 100%, and I
Well,
think,
Eddie Van
it's all in there.
Halen did something really unique. He got the humbucker sound attached to a Fender body with a maple neck. Is that right?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There it is behind you. There it is behind you, Andrew.
So he loved the Gibson sound, but didn't like the weight or the feel of a Les Paul Gibson. So loved the Strat body, but didn't like that thin Strat tone that we were just talking about earlier. So
Right.
he was the first guy to put a humbucker in a Strat body.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
And then you
That's
got your P90s and your Gretsch pickups and Guilds. And it's just incredible. It just goes on and on.
Well, that's all over my head, brother.
Yeah. I have to bow out. I'm having technical problems. I've got static noise and I'm freezing a lot.
No, we've been on for 1 minute, for an hour and 35. It's always a pleasure catching up with you guys. We'll see you next week. If Simon wants to say the roll call and say good day to everybody, we'll let you go and have dinner, Carl.
Yes, dinner. Fill the family. So it's really nice to see Arvin and Kubrick Lover.
Awesome.
And Mickey Settlemire and Sonia.
Awesome.
And Jack Daniels. Thanks very much, guys, for dropping in your contributions. Valuable and interesting as always. Yeah.
Yeah, love hanging out
unfrozen. With you. Yeah, we've got a storm in the UK, Storm Cara, because now any bit of wind is now got to have a name in good old Americans, hurricane, whatever. We've got a bit of wind called Cara blowing across the thing, which is probably affecting me a bit, probably affecting my internet a bit.
So long it's not named after Merkel, and it's not called Angela.
Angela Merkel. It's not called Angela Merkel.
Okay.
It's not called Donald Tusk.
Oh, all right, my friends. Always a pleasure hanging out with you guys. Look forward to next week.
Yeah. So we've done cream, haven't we? Have we finished?
We've done cream, and we'll surprise you guys all when we come on next week, because we haven't even decided what we're going to talk about yet. So, but it'll be something.
We've got a whole week to work it out.
Cool, guys.
Catch you guys.
Cool. All right, guys. Take care.
It.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye.